Welcome to the Campbell Care, Self-Aware Campbell Care podcast. We got our guest, Dr. Charlie Fagenholz, who I've known for 8 or 9, 10 years almost.
10 years.
Because you were a year ahead of me at National University of Health Sciences in Lombard, Illinois.
Yep.
And we took AK together. And then
That was February of 2013, so that's 10 years.
Yep. And you've had a long journey before and after that. So I'd like you to kind of introduce yourself and your story of how you got into, becoming more self-aware with natural health and healing. And we'll get a little more into fatigue and hormones after that. But you want to introduce who you are, where you're from, what you're all about?
So originally from Chicagoland area, right? I'll go where I went from there, and then I'll go into my journey of how I wanted to be a chiropractor. So from Chicago, went to California for 7 years. And then in the last year have been in Franklin, Tennessee. And originally I was going to pharmacy school, which is pretty wild.
Whoa, be a drug pusher.
I would be like
giver.
Finest drug giver on the planet.
Legal drug dealers.
But I'll never forget, I was, I was pre-pharmacy and stuff. And my mom's like, "You sure you want to do this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do want to do this," because growing up, was on a lot of medications. I was always on an antibiotic or a steroid or something, and so I thought that was the way. And 2 minutes of job shadowing, my mom's like, "You should job shadow to see if you really want to do this." 2 minutes of job shadowing a pharmacist, I'm like, what am I thinking? I can't talk to these pills all day,
Yeah. It's not the most exciting job.
It is quite the opposite. Not to, hate on pharmacists. I know it's for a certain type of mind or whatever, but it just wasn't. It didn't give me joy. It didn't bring me I could do this forever. So I thought of what other type of doctors have I had experience with that I could see myself doing. And my number 2 option actually was podiatry. I had a lot of ingrown toenails playing basketball, and did a job shadow again. Never forget. Sitting there, and she's probably 7 years old, 7, 8, comes in screaming to get her warts on her foot frozen and removed. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, oh boy, this is not what I want to do. But I'm like, so to the doctor, I'm like, so that was interesting. How many of those do you get a day? And he's like, a few. I'm like, okay, so this profession's out. I'm not doing that.
The screaming kids.
Oh, it was too much. And then I went to my chiropractor because I played basketball. I had SI joint pain, and he was a really good dude. He didn't practice AK or muscle testing or anything like that. He was a straight chiropractic. And that was the first doctor that I followed that people walked in and left feeling better than when they walked in. And that kind of spoke volumes to me. I was like, and there was good conversation. I get the chills when I even am telling you about it, because it's like, it was instrumental in my decision for my life path. Something so tiny as that, right? And that was the day where I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to chiropractic school. And I knew that I just wanted to help people. And so I go pre-med still, but I go towards chiropractic. Go to chiro school. And a year into school, someone is... actually, it was the first trimester, because we were on trimesters, first trimester in anatomy lab. And this kid, Tom, was like, "Hey, you should go to AK Club on Fridays." He's like, "It's like this muscle testing stuff." And this kid, Jordan, teaches it. And he's like, and then he had me hold my eyes different ways. I couldn't hold strong. He adjusted my occiput. Now I could hold strong. I felt good. And I'm like, dude, that sounds out there. I'm not going to AK Club. So then a year goes by, and I'm going to Italy. Speak of Italy, right? You're going tomorrow. And I had allergies, and I'm like, okay, I need to get into the naturopath clinic, because I was learning neuroanatomy from someone who was an ND, and she's like, "Hey, you guys see my friend? He's a great student clinic in the ND clinic, and he could take a look." I'm like, okay. So I go there. He's booked out a few weeks. I'm leaving the next week for Italy. I get paired up with a doc who was coming back for her ND, who was an AK doc. And she starts muscle testing me. And she's like, "Hey, your occiput's off." Speak of the devil again, occiput, from what Tom was telling me. do you know who Jordan is? And I'm like, oh, I see him in the adjusting labs all the time. The kid's always working on people. And I'm like, yeah, I do know who he is. And she's like, well, you should go tell him what I found, because I can't adjust you legally in this clinic right now, but go see Jordan. So then I go see Jordan. He adjusts me, and he gave me like the best adjustment I had to date at that point. And I'm like, I want to learn how to do that. And he's like, well, it's called Gonstead adjusting. It's not taught at National. You got to go outside to learn it. So I started training with him, so to speak, and adjusting each other constantly. And he goes, do you want to learn this muscle testing stuff? And I'm like, no. People are going to pay me for my hands. They're going to pay me for adjustments. I want to learn that. He's like, well, do you mind if I treat you with it? I'm like, go ahead. Sure. That treatment, I felt so good, like immediately good, that it was like the light bulb went off. I knew it was a big moment in my life. I just didn't know how big that moment really was. You know, I knew in that time that this is what the world needs more of. And I didn't know how I could scale it or what my purpose was in that, but I knew it was huge. So I felt so good, and I just couldn't. You just have to experience that feeling, right? And you feel so good, you want to give it to other people. So then start AK. That's when I met you.
Yep. Applied kinesiology.
Applied kinesiology, did a 100-hour course. Within that first year, I took all of TBM, started doing Francis work, started doing NET, and I would study AK, I mean, like addicted. My GPA in school dropped like 2 points. Never paid attention. I literally sat in class and just on my computer and just studied AK. Studied all the stuff we learned at our seminars. Every lunch period, I was having my hands on somebody, treating somebody for 3.5 years. And then started going to different seminars from there. You know, you kind of do your thing, you branch out. Different techniques resonate with you, different ones don't. Found CRA at the end. Then went to California when I graduated, and just kind of flourished in practice and saw patients from everywhere. And that was pretty much the avenue.
Yeah. I remember you were like a walking library. You were basically like an AK textbook in a brain. I
have a photographic memory, so to speak. Not as much as I used to. I feel like I've lost it a little bit, but I learned how to adjust in my sleep. In a dream, I learned how to adjust. What? And yeah, it was a seated CT. I was like, I can't do this. And I did it in my dream. Next day at school, boom, done.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Your brain was like processing how to...
Literally.
That's cool.
And so I looked at AK so much that I could just regurgitate everything. And it served me.
Nice. So then, but you're no longer in Cali now.
Correct. I had to get out of California.
Yep. You're still seeing... Why'd you get out of Cali? It's the dreamland, the promised land.
Yeah, it's the dreamland. I mean, can I talk freely on this podcast? It's all uncensored?
Yeah.
Perfect. I mean, obviously raising a family with a bunch of vaccine crazies is insane.
How so?
You go there and you can't live essentially unless you're vaccinated, and you feel like you're constantly trying to hide from everything. And every county, San Diego and LA County, is just enclosing on the bubble of Orange County. And it's not sustainable.
Plus, you were in the pandemic when it was extra crazy.
For sure. And Orange County was a bubble. You know, there were people like Huntington Beach is like conservative central. I mean, there's restaurants that said you can't come in here if you're wearing a mask. Yeah. You know, exact opposite of a lot. And I was forever grateful for being at Cone Health Institute.
Yeah.
You know, it was an oasis for a lot of people in the pandemic. People would go there, they didn't have to wear a mask. People would come there just to do that.
Yeah. And
we just got busier and busier and busier when people were waking up to how important health is. And we kind of, you know, stood our ground. And yeah, I'm very grateful for I was at the time. I just knew as soon as we started a family, it wasn't sustainable. So, yeah.
Were you like always conservative? Or is that like something you walked into?
Technically, no, because when I went to University of Iowa as a freshman, that was 2008, right? I voted for Obama. Obama was the change that the country needed. All the kids on campus, you're engulfed in that culture. And then you get out of school, you start reading about policies, you start making money, your priorities change a little bit. And I became middle of the road, right leaning when I started reading policies and how the Democratic policies sound good. They sound like if you don't agree with them that you don't have a heart, right? Yeah. But Thomas Sowell, who I love to listen to, who's an economist, he says that if you ask the question at what cost, that basically none of the Democratic ideologies or laws can pass that because it's going to destroy society in one form or another. And, I started listening to him. I started listening to Larry Elder. And just they kind of changed my thinking. It's like I had the thinking already, but they said it so perfectly that I was just like, you know what? I definitely, I'm a registered libertarian. I'm not even a registered Republican.
Yeah.
But I lean right on most issues. I wouldn't say every issue, but I would say most.
Got it. Yeah, that could be hard in California to have those viewpoints.
Yeah. Orange County, again, a bubble.
So then what led you to go to Tennessee? Because you were looking at Arizona.
Yeah. We were going to Arizona. My mom had a house there, still has a house there. Grew up going to Arizona, loved it. Close enough to California to go back if we wanted. And then I always do things in threes. So if I hear something 3 times, it's a sign. And our best friends from California, who grew up in California, moved to Franklin, Tennessee, Brentwood. And they're like, hey, you have to come out here. You have to see it. We're like, we're not going back to season change. We're just not doing it.
Winters.
And then 2 was Dr. Chris Motley, who do you know Chris?
Yeah.
You know Chris, yeah. So took a seminar that he was teaching, and he was watching me treat somebody, and he's like, dude, you need to move to Tennessee. Like, you will crush it in Tennessee. And Nashville needs what we do. He's 10 years older than us, so he's been in practice a little longer than us. I'm like, I'm going to Arizona. Like, this is all set in stone. But, he's like, I get it. Scottsdale's nice, blah, blah, blah. And then I go to Vegas with Howie Cohn. We go to a comedian in November of 2021. I get back on a Sunday. That Thursday, I'm applying for my license in Arizona. My wife, Andrea, goes, I know I've been hating on Tennessee, but I have a strong intuitive feeling that we need to check out Tennessee. I'm like, all right, there's the third time. That's the third. So we booked a flight 3 weeks later and took 4 days. And in 4 days, we knew this was the place to raise a family.
Does it feel like a healthier place?
Not necessarily. I would say there's definitely that health community. But California, so much healthier there, so to speak. So many people are more health conscious. Everything starts west and moves east, right?
Right.
But it's hard when you're in Tennessee sprayed with pesticides all the time. And there's a lot of that type of stuff going on that just is not health promoting. Diet for people, like coming around on diet's pretty big, obviously, as you know, and Tennessee is, barbecue 101. And so I wouldn't necessarily call it a health place, but I would say that it is up and coming. Yeah. The amount of people, the influx of people, and the people, I don't want to say, I hate to generalize, but I feel like that most people who are moving to Tennessee are moving there because it's a red state. And those people are generally not for vaccines, generally. Yeah. Not everyone. And I just said I hate to generalize, and then I just said generally.
Well, it's interesting how the pandemic made vaccines a political thing, and a ton of for better or worse, that was one of the best things that happened, I think, because it gave us a real control group to see how effective they were or not. Yep. But there's so many people who are conservative now who are in this place where they're questioning for the first time their vaccines that they got. They're questioning the flu shot. They're saying oh my gosh, the flu shot only has 10, 12% efficacy at best most years. Yeah. They're looking at the childhood ones going, should I keep doing them? What do I do? And they're super lost. They have no clue where to go, what to do with any of that stuff.
Correct. And, I would say that to your point that 2020 really opened people's eyes to that stuff. And then the other thing, now everyone knows what vitamin D, quercetin, zinc, and NAC is.
Yeah.
Like everybody.
Yep.
Day one, my patients, a lot of them would be like, okay, so should I still take my NAC? I'm like, I always ask, like, why do you take that? Well, during the pandemic, I'm like, dang.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're still, you're like, you have way too much zinc, like overload.
Yeah.
But my big thing in the pandemic was just like when Dr. Fauci got on the news and said he was taking vitamin C, D, and zinc, but not telling anybody else to do it. I'm like, wait, what? They don't care about you.
Yeah.
Like they really don't care.
And I mean, he's messed up everything since like HIV AIDS.
Yeah. When you really get into the history and the textbooks that have come out on that, it's been a struggle bus for a while.
And I mean, think about just our tax dollars funding research at University of North Carolina, then it switches over to the Wuhan Virology Lab or whatever it's called, the institute.
Right.
There's just a lot of stuff that, I mean, at this point, most people, I would say, like, don't trust the government. And so this is a perfect example of like, this happens across all of government, from medicine to policy to all that type of stuff. And it's sad.
Yeah.
It's sad.
People are definitely tired of it.
Yeah, I would 100% agree.
I'm kind of glad that it's in 2023 now, like a little bit over. Like people are over it. Like I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear the word COVID again. Let's just like move on.
I sure hope so.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I still see people wearing masks all the time. I'm like, well, the only good thing is I know who I'm not going to get along with.
Right.
Like if you're still wearing a mask, I would probably guess that you and I are definitely different at our core.
Right.
And I'm not about superficial relationships. So if I keep a small circle, and if you're a mask wearer, you're probably not going to be in that circle ever.
I know at this point, there's very few and far in between who are doing it. And some of it's a virtual signal thing. My instinct, my like go-to is like, give them the benefit of the doubt. Like maybe they're dying or something, or they got cancer. I'm like, are they caretaking for someone who has cancer? But then I'm like, it's not usually that.
Correct. But I like where your head's at.
Yeah.
And I try to do that too, but I just am not as good at it as you.
Right. I mean, I had a patient this week where she hadn't been inside with anybody unmasked for 3 years. It was like her first time in 2023. And it's anxiety. Like she admits like this was an anxiety. It was a germophobia.
Yeah.
The pandemic like triggered it. Her anxiety switched to germs.
Yeah.
And people became super scared. And I'm seeing a lot of just like people have been subtly traumatized and they're super burnt out right now.
I mean, we're going to be talking about fatigue and hormones. That's like, I mean, 2020 is the year of the HPA axis, right? Like stress responses, subconscious programming.
Well, for people who don't know, what is the HPA axis?
It's the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. So it's the two parts of the brain down to basically your stress glands. And it regulates your whole stress response, which is a big deal.
Yeah. And people were a little stressed for the last 3 years.
Yeah. On all levels.
Right. Like people say like, I wasn't stressed. I was fine. Which is fine is never fine. When the patient comes in, they're fine. I'm like, for the Italian job, I think of Italy, they say freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. Because people are like, I'm fine. They cross their arms like, I'm fine. My childhood was great. I'm not stressed. Pandemic was fine. But they come in, they have all these different signs of adrenal fatigue or HPA axis dysfunction, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But what do you see as far as like when the HPA axis is off? Like, what do you notice if their adrenals or their brain is stressed? Are there things you've been seeing in your patients?
That's a good question. I don't know. I honestly don't know how to answer that because I see so many different types of patients. And I mean, the main technique or one of the main techniques is CPK, right? Offshoot of applied kinesiology for those who are listening. The founder created 3 different entry points into the body. Entry point 1, 2, and 3, and they align with Hans Selye general adaptation syndrome, alarm, resistance, and exhaustion. And a lot of people are in exhaustion.
Wow.
And
which means you've been stressed for a long time.
Long time. I would say majority of people are in resistance. It's the only people I find that are really in alarm phase are existing patients because they're getting arc hair, acupuncture, craniosacral. They're doing the action steps. But when you come in on day one, I don't remember the last time on a day one that I probably didn't find a master point 3 exhaustion phase being where we need to start. And I'm talking like 7-year-old kids.
Whoa.
6-year-old kids. Like that's a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, I see that too, even in this area. Like, it's a pretty well-off, nice area. People are fairly healthy, but like new patients who haven't been seeing a practitioner, they're almost all in burnout, which is like a real ICD-10 diagnosis now.
Yeah, it's sad.
The kids are craving salt, they're craving sugar. A lot of them have POTS, or they can't even wake up with energy. They're usually not even hungry for breakfast. Like,
that's a big one. I would say getting up and being dizzy, right? I got up too quick kind of thing.
That's super common. People think it's normal.
Yeah, people think it's normal because it's so common. Shining a light, pupillary light reflex. If you shine the light in your eye from the side, and your pupils should stay constricted for an amount of time, and pupils just dilates. That's nervous tissue. That tells you right there. That's a direct nervous system test. Yeah. How well is your nervous system adapting to stress? That's an easy at-home test right there.
Yeah, the black part should get small and stay there for at least a few seconds.
I would say it's supposed to be 30 seconds.
What?
That's what they say, 30 seconds.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Some people say 40 seconds, but
usually you see like none or 2 max.
And you'll see them, it'll like constrict and then start like dilating, constricting. You'll see that quite a bit. The big one that you hit on is not hungry in the morning. Yeah. Which then really just drives it further down the hole, because when you're not hungry, you should be hungry, and your blood sugar's low. Your body secretes adrenaline to raise your blood sugar. And now you're in the vicious circle of stress hormone, insulin. And now we're seeing type 2 diabetes constantly. You're seeing energy, fatigue issues. You're seeing all these hormone issues. You're seeing chronic infection. You're seeing autoimmunity. We just talked earlier about autoimmunity and the cortisol awakening response. Yep. So it's a big deal.
So the stress could cause autoimmunity.
100%.
Can you dive deeper into that at all? Like, how does that happen? Because autoimmune is this huge up and coming thing. And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I had eczema or asthma or Hashimoto's or their ANA is positive. Their doctor tells them they're fine. Like, it's a lot of this stuff.
So I'll answer that 2 ways. First way is probably the biggest point that I made in my autoimmunity video in the membership, is that autoimmunity, your body doesn't make mistakes. It was designed exactly how it should be. So if your body's attacking itself, it's not making a mistake. It's doing what it's designed to do, but you have toxins that is in the tissues, and the tissue's getting in the crossfire. So if you have any form of autoimmunity, Hashimoto's, Crohn's, rheumatoid arthritis, there is toxins in you that your body is trying to get rid of. And it's just your tissues are in the way. And it depends on you. Is it your thyroid? Is it your joints? Everyone's a biochemical individual. Now, the second part of that, which is the cortisol awakening response. So for those of you listening, that is the first 30 minutes that when you wake up, your cortisol should spike, should go up. That gives you energy, alertness, right? Your blood sugar's low at that point. So cortisol, along with adrenaline, is what raises your blood sugar.
Like feeling motivated, happy in the morning.
My biggest mentor, teacher, Dick Versendahl, would say that hormones make you see in color and get you through life. And it's true. If someone has bad hormones, they're blah. They don't see, right? I mean, they
are blah. They come in and they're like, hi.
Yeah, exactly. And then when your hormones are working properly, it's like the sky is bluer, the grass is greener. Life is worth it. Yeah. And Versendahl really hit that home for me. And so that initial cortisol response in the morning, what happens with autoimmunity is you have this thymus gland. And the thymus gland is pretty badass, honestly. Yeah. It's like, I feel like gallbladder and thymus gland and bladder are the 3 organs that we don't talk enough about. But the thymus gland has a perfect 3D image, essentially. It has each one of your tissues, a replica of your tissues in it. So that what happens is when your body's making T cells, which is what basically is your immune cells, right, for lack of deeper understanding, they have to go through the thymus, and then it gets compared to all your self tissues. And if it is close to your self tissue, it prevents autoimmunity. So then it tells the body to kill that bad T cell. The issue is that process only happens in the presence of good cortisol.
Oh.
And so if you are in cortisol, adrenal fatigue, and you can't secrete enough of it, now you're set up for bad T cells.
Not good for your immune system.
Not good for the immune system. And then it can attack self-tissue.
Yikes.
So that's
self-destruct.
Boom.
Wait, no,
Not a good state to live in.
Right.
Right? So that's my two-part answer to stress hormone and autoimmunity.
What does someone do if they're like, I don't wake up, I don't see in color, I don't sleep well, I don't wake up with motivation or purpose, or I'm not hungry in the morning, or my doctor told me to fast in the morning, and then I'm feeling worse and more fatigued, not losing weight. Like, what do you do?
And so you're asking this as they don't have access to docs like us?
I mean, if they can find a doc like us,
yeah,
that's helpful.
You got to have a coach in your corner. No matter how good of a player you are, without a coach, it can't take you to that next level, right? We all need, you get treated by other doctors, I get treated by other doctors. Just because we have this knowledge doesn't mean that we should be our own doctor.
Right.
Right. But I mean, I'd say the biggest thing, honestly, mental stress. Mental stress. So
work on your stress.
Work on how you adapt to your stress. Whether that's vagal nerve exercises. Some people really like cold showers in the morning. Cold showers, cold plunges are supposed to really help that cortisol awakening response. I almost said corticoid again. I don't know why I keep saying that. That's a really good one.
That's a shock. It'll like jump your cortisol right up. I think that's notice people who do it in the morning.
Yeah.
They're like, I feel amazing. Like,
Correct.
that's how you're probably supposed to feel all the time.
The issue is that people don't know what it's like to feel good. They're like, well, I'm fine. How you doing? I'm fine. How's your bowel movements? They're fine. But they don't know what it's like to have good, healthy bowel movements. They don't know what it's like to have good energy. They're just comparing themselves to yesterday.
Yep.
And that's just not a wise plan or good comparison, so to speak.
Yeah. It's like a slow fog that rolls in. Sometimes I'll tell people when they're really stressed, I'm like, it's sort of, they expect to be like instantly better.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it took you a long time to get here. It's
Yeah.
like you're in San Fran and there's like a lot of foggy days. I'm like, it's not just going to roll out in 1 minute. Like, it's going to slowly clear layers of fog out.
Totally.
But I think you taught me that, maybe it was from the cone thing, how like the biggest lie in healthcare and how that's like, I feel fine.
Yeah.
Like, I'm symptom free.
Biggest lie ever told is that if you have no symptoms, that equates to health. Yeah. That's from the recording at Cone Health Institute that plays on repeat on the phone.
Really?
Oh yeah. You call and you get put on hold, and it's Howie talking for like 20 minutes at some seminar in California, saying how, especially that, like, that's the essential message. And then, he goes on to say how, that if you tell a lie long enough and loud enough, people will believe or begin to believe it. And then, how great for rulers that men don't think. And that's two quotes by Hitler.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Dang. I mean, that's exactly why I started speaking out in the pandemic and did social media in 2020 was I'm like, the people who kept repeating the same thing over and over again, or the government, like, people believed them.
Yeah. Because when you see it constantly, and like, did you ever see that? I saw it on YouTube, I think, where it was like 20 different news stations all saying the same thing, like a script.
Oh, yes.
Remember that video where it was like
every
maybe
news anchor,
16 different ones, and they were all on cue, the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, George Orwell called it.
Yep.
Orwell called it.
Yep. 1984.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming.
It has. It has. But it as much as it kind of sucked, not kind of, did, but, how you said it woke people up. Like, sometimes you have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough. And I think that this country needs a lot of breakthroughs.
So we got to break people down somewhere.
Yeah. Maybe not with like making a virus in a lab in China and letting it out, but some other way.
Some other gentler way.
Yeah, that's not funded by our tax dollars.
That'd be great. Well, there's a part right there that I wanted to jump right back to, which I think is so many people are not symptom free. They just come to accept their symptoms, which is sort of what you were talking about.
Yeah.
But it's like they come in and they're like, I have one problem. And usually there's at least 20 symptoms that they check off on their form. And even like checking off the new patient paper, like, I'm not as healthy as I thought I was. Because I'll ask them about everything they check off.
Yeah.
and they're bleeding out their bum.
Yeah.
They're not waking up. They're not hungry in the morning. They wake up to pee like 5 times a night, and they think that's normal because their friends are that way or they're better than their wife.
Yeah. I think it's Tony Robbins said, as soon as you compare yourself to someone else, you lower your standards.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's a great one. Yeah, as soon as you compare yourself, because people will...
Unless it's like God or something.
Right. Well, relative, right?
Yeah, relative.
Like, a lot of patients will say that, well, how come like I have all this stuff and Miss Susie Q's daughters can eat gluten and they're fine? And it's like, do you know that they're fine? Or is your perception that they're fine? And if you compare yourself to someone else, you lower your standards. I always say that quote.
Well, that's like I feel like truth comes in paradoxes, and that's like the opposite of like, can't compare yourself to yesterday, because then you're not going to notice it. But like compare yourself to you as like a 20-year-old, or I don't know. But you shouldn't be bleeding out your bum. No. You should be waking up with energy, seeing in color. Yeah,
you should. I mean, you're alive. The chance the chance that you're alive is a miracle in itself. You can't waste it. Why waste it? Right. And I don't want to, say that people waste it, but like people give power to things that don't deserve power in their life.
Like what?
Mental stress.
Yeah.
Like when a zebra is running from a lion in the wild and their cortisol and their HPA axis is going nuts, as soon as that lion's gone, 10 minutes later, that zebra's back to like good. Humans are not like that. Humans are, they will think their whole life away, essentially. They will create stories. The longer something goes, the more they're like, yeah, I think this is what happened. And it doesn't matter what really happened, because all it matters is what your body perceives to be real. And so that is human nature, and it destroys us.
So how do you get people to change their stories?
In my opinion, through physiological-based techniques and practices. So things like acupuncture, things like EFT tapping, the fast technique from NET, right? Pulse points. Yeah. Because emotions aren't in our head, they're in our physiology. We feel them, right? Neuropeptides. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of people will totally understand what that is. And right away, they're like, yes, you feel your emotions. That's why when you're nervous, you get a pit in your stomach, you sweat from your armpits, you go into that fight or flight. And so if we're only doing talk therapy, which can really help a bunch of people, talk therapy, if you're that person who needs to talk out loud and just get your stuff off your chest, amazing. But there's a lot of people who can do that and still need it out of their physiology with intent.
Yeah, I say it in a nice way, but a lot of people do therapy for years, but their life sucks still.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm here, but I'm still stressed.
Yeah.
Like, why am I doing talk therapy and still stressed?
Yeah. And I think together the combo is really good, because I'm not a talker. Like, I'm not like, I don't need to vomit my stuff all over people.
That's nice of you.
I try.
Yeah.
Some people get irritated because they're like, man, you're just never stressed. I'm like, no, I stress, but like, I just don't make a big thing out of things that don't need to be big things.
Yeah.
Like I'm good. I have a great family. I love what I do for a living.
Like perspective.
Yeah, it is perspective. And I don't know who said this, but they're so true, is if you are anxious and depressed, it just means you don't know your purpose. And if you find what you're here for, it gives you so much purpose that nothing can take you off that path. And that's pretty true.
That is true. It's fatigued too.
Yeah.
Like when people are fatigued, I'm like, what's your reason for getting up and having energy? Like,
right.
What do you need energy for?
Yeah.
Why would you need energy if you're just going to sit on your phone, bum around at a job you hate, come home to kids that you don't like?
It's true.
Maybe you should try building your relationships or changing jobs, but people are scared to change.
Oh man. I mean, people hate change. People hate feeling uncomfortable.
Oh.
And the tough part is that you need to feel uncomfortable to change.
Yeah.
There's one thing that I'll also say with patients. I haven't used this one in a while, but it just popped in my head, so I feel like I have to say it. There's a video on YouTube, and it's basically a video that starts at the Earth, and then it just keeps zooming out all the way to what we've photographed in the solar systems and galaxies. And when you see, it's like 20 minutes of just zooming out, right? Yeah. When you see how minuscule Earth is and how minuscule that means we are, like, is it worth stressing? Yeah. Like, life is everything we have, but it's also extremely insignificant in what's out there, which is pretty wild.
Yeah.
You know, and so when you wake up and you think that something bad's going to happen to you, why? Well, I mean, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
You know, hopefully that helps somebody.
Yeah, I'm sure people will resonate.
Yeah, I'm sure other people will be like, man, this guy is an insensitive asshole.
Like, what are you talking about? Just don't worry. Just chill.
They're like, yeah, you guys.
Well, it's a combo. It's like sometimes you can overcome your feelings with your thoughts. Like you can kind of, I tell people there's like 2 ways to clear stress. One is feel it to heal it, which is like the neuropeptides, and you have to feel it to process it, and the all EFT and everything you talked about. The other one you just talked about was basically, I've been jokingly calling it gaslighting yourself, which is like teaching yourself that you're lying in your head.
Yeah.
Like you're a liar. Your story is wrong about the universe. Let's like rewrite that. You're basically self-hypnotizing yourself.
Sure.
To say like, cancel the negative thought, replace it with something positive. Look at a bigger perspective. Like say, this guy cut me off, and instead of saying like, I'm so mad at him, being like, oh, he's probably has diarrhea and he feels really bad and he has no cortisol awakening response.
There you go. You're starting to say it the wrong way.
Cortisol awakening response. Well,
no, I like that. I think that's correct. I would definitely vibe with that.
Yeah.
I'd definitely vibe with that.
Is there a way when people come in, like how do you determine who needs what? I kind of know the answer, but like how do you determine where to start with someone when they have all these problems going on? Like where's your access point? I know you probably have muscle testing and stuff, but like,
yeah.
Do you go with your gut? Do you test people?
I test everybody. I mean, I use hand modes for everything. You know, so people who are watching this, because this is actually videotaped, not just, you know, voice, right? They can see me right now. I can't hide behind my microphone. Hand modes are essentially created by an engineer who became a chiropractor. And every finger is a different antenna because it generates different frequencies, right? And so your index is structural, chemical, emotional, bioelectric, and all of them together in your palm is an organ file. And so every different finger position that you can make, that basically you take the thumb and it shortens the antenna, so it shortens that, which changes the hertz, the frequency in hertz. You can make distress signals. So like, for instance, in chemistry, you can go deficient, toxic, allergy, metabolism issue, hormone issue, leaky gut, blood-brain barrier, viral, neurotransmitters, bacterial, blood sugar, parasite, mold, yeast, trace minerals, heavy metals, H. pylori, gluten, Lyme, Bartonella babesia, Lyme neurotoxin, pH, Krebs cycle, methylation, mitochondria. What was the third? Why am I blanking out? What was the third? COVID, Omicron, blood, enzymes, hydration, low blood flow, spike protein. It's a lot.
There's a lot of hand modes.
There's a lot of hand modes. And so what I'll do is I'll go and ask the body where to start. Are we starting structurally, chemically, emotionally, bioelectric, organ, and just go through what we call the biocomputer. And most times what I find is infections are the number one thing. Parasites, yeast, viruses, bacteria, Lyme, co-infections, mold, by far.
So why do you think so many people have, I see the same thing. Like infections are huge.
Yeah.
One of my mentors, Stuart White, he was on the podcast before. And he didn't mention this on the podcast, but he says when something happens for no reason, think infection.
Yeah.
It's like, why did this happen? I don't know. Well, we probably are infected with something.
I think the reason why we're so infected, one is because we are basically microbes covered in skin. And so a lot of those microbes can pleomorph in the presence of environmental toxins, glyphosate, pesticides, herbicides, too much estrogen.
So pleomorphism, you got to explain because this is trippy.
Yeah. So basically, like bugs can transform themselves from good to bad. And then they can also transform themselves in the presence of toxins. They also transform themselves from one species to another, which is wild.
Yep.
Like a bacteria can become a fungus, which can turn into a virus.
Yep.
Which is insane.
And a lot of the research on that was completely shut down by the government.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
Like the microscopes that see it were destroyed.
They're like, that's amazing. Now let's go fund this coronavirus research over here.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyways, back to, pleomorphism and
so
why everyone's infected.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big one with the toxins that pleomorph our own bacteria. Mm-hmm. You know, we talk about H. pylori, staph, strep, like that's all in us already. Candida, it's already in us.
Yep.
Right. And so toxins, and then I would say the wrong treatment of Western medicine. I think antibiotics and steroids, especially antibiotics, life-saving. When you use an emergency medicine for a common cold, chronic disease promoting.
Right.
You know, and I'm no exception to that growing up. And I remember his name was Dr. Kaufman. I remember him coming making house calls. Remember when MDs made house calls? Coming in, I'd be sick. He'd give me an antibiotic shot right in my glute. Every sniffle, antibiotic.
Yep.
You know, this issue, here's a steroid. Well, what's steroid do? Feeds yeast.
Yep.
Breaks your bones.
I know. Before I was thinking, I was like, why was I so unhealthy in my 20s? And I realized it was because I had over 100 doses of antibiotics. My mom and I figured out. She's like, yeah, you were basically on antibiotics like every other month.
That's
Ear
so
infections, sinus infections.
Me too. Sinus infections like crazy.
And everyone's like, why are you so sensitive? Why is your gut sensitive? I'm like, oh, well, you don't quite recover from that many antibiotics.
It's tough. And it's a never ending, like Versandal would say that the road to health is paved in front of you, and it's paved every single day. And you have to keep working on it, or else it's just going to stop, and then you're going to stop. So, yeah, I mean, it's the suppression of acute symptoms leads to chronic pathology.
Yeah.
Right? We just drive it in further into the system until it comes out as something uglier, worse down the road.
Right. Just cover it up, pull off the fire alarm. Don't worry about the burning school with all the children running around screaming with their heads cut off. Like,
yeah, bingo.
Just pull off the fire alarm, pretend like there's no big problem. Just
right.
give him like a steroid shot.
Yep.
Give him an antibiotic.
And a steroid shot. If a steroid shot works for you, you know your adrenals are trashed.
Yeah.
Because the same thing, the cortisol we've been talking about, is a steroid based, right? It's a glucocorticoid. There's corticoid right there.
Yeah,
That's what I was
there
saying
it is.
But that's steroids. So if your internal steroid system is gone, then you are inflamed, and then cortisone shot or whatever inhaler steroids that you need to use, that's because your body isn't doing what it was designed to do. There is an issue. And so that's where people like you and I kind of ask, like, okay, what's the issue? Why is it there? Yeah. Right? That's pretty much what we've dedicated our life to doing.
I think another reason too, like everyone's infected, is just our food is terrible. The soil is terrible. Like I was just talking to a patient, and we were talking about how when we were kids 20, 30 years ago, like you could drive to central Illinois and you'd come back and you'd have to wash your windshield from all the bugs.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Those are gone. Kids don't know you get bugs on your windshield. They're like, what are bugs on your windshield? I was like, wait, they have no idea what this is.
Yep.
That means the diversity of our soil.
That's a great point.
And like you never realize it's like getting sick. Like you don't know you're sick. And then one day you wake up and you're just like, wait, I don't feel the same.
Yeah.
Like one day I woke up and I'm like, there's no bugs on my windshield.
Yeah.
What happened?
What about fireflies? You ever see fireflies anymore?
No.
Me either. And that's a problem.
It's a problem.
That's a problem. Actually, I see a little bit in Tennessee, tiny.
They're so beautiful.
They're great.
But people don't realize like that means that there's less diversity of species of insect, which means there's less bugs in the soil.
Yep.
Which means the food has less probiotics on it when they pull it out of the ground, which means our guts are worse off.
Yep.
Like you can't separate the animal planet from us as animals, and like the external and internal ecosystems are both, the flora is like wrecked.
It's gone.
Both ways. Luckily, we can repair it a little bit.
Yeah.
But
we have tools.
we're in the hole.
Yeah,
we're in the red.
We're in the trenches.
We're in the trenches. Naming your membership.
Yeah, that's why I named my membership that, because it's all information of just working on patients and seeing like, what can help us in the trenches, right?
Yeah.
One of the things on our podcast that I always say this almost on every single one of them, is every time that it's technology or mostly technology generally, because we're obsessed with technological advances. Anytime that something comes out, you have to ask yourself, at what cost to my health?
Yeah.
And similar to Thomas Sowell talking about democratic laws and that stuff, this is that version, but for our health. Like, not too many things can pass the test of like, oh, you don't like that your headphones have a cord and it gets tangled? Here, take some Bluetooth ones and put it directly into your ears.
Right.
Oh, you don't like your old school watches? Here's an Apple Watch right over your meridian points that is constant EMF.
It's like you don't like that your kid gets sick once a year and you have to take off from work. Here, just give them another shot in their arm.
Exactly.
Like at what cost?
At what cost? You know, not too many things can pass that test, and foods are one of them. You want to spray glyphosate and Roundup pesticides on foods to make a higher yield of crop because bugs don't eat them as much. All right, now you're going to get more yield for your crop. You're going to make more money, but not at what cost to our health. Now you just created a whole IBS basically pattern in our society.
Yep. So, I mean, a lot of why people are sick is not entirely their fault.
Right.
Right. We're living in a sick world with bad soil and bad crops and lots of toxins and things like that. But then what can they really do to start to help themselves?
I mean, a little bit goes a long way, I would say, because you're like, we live in a fishbowl that we can't take ourselves out of to clean, right? It's like the dirty goldfish analogy. But we can do little things every day that we can control the controllables. You know, if you can control the controllables, you will live a happy and, for the most part, healthy, satisfying life. But if you stress about the stuff you can't control, there goes your HPA axis. There goes your stress. You know, so like maybe take a binder each day. Maybe take some Takasumi each day, and that's a big step forward. Now you're getting something that helps with the glyphosate exposure. If you're eating foods you're sensitive to, it can help with that.
Yep.
Maybe supporting your methylation. You know, take a product that helps you methylate better. Or take one ashwagandha tablet a day to help your stress response. Yep. You know, it's there's so much to do, but if you try to do it all at once, it's completely overwhelming.
Yeah.
And that's, again, goes back to you need a coach in your corner to really help guide you on what's the biggest priority for you. Because like my priority might be heavy metals and your priority might be fungus, and we have the same symptoms. But if we both go at the same thing, might get well because it's 50-50 chance, right? Like if we're both going after metals, I will probably get well faster and you probably will have a miserable time.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
Did that answer your question? I think so.
Yeah. I mean, like, where do people start? It's like little goes a long way. Just do one thing at a time.
Drink water.
Yeah. Clean water is a big one.
Huge.
And it's cheaper than getting organic food, grass-fed stuff.
Correct. And I would argue that water is more important than food.
It's hard to live without water. You can, I guess. Well, there's
can.
some influencers now who are like, they just eat watermelon every day.
Yeah,
they're like, get my water through my watermelon. They're like, water's for pansies. They're like the carnivores who are like the extremism.
Yeah, carnivore is a little intense.
Well, extremism does really well on social media.
I've
learned.
I mean, it sells.
Yeah. I've learned, like, the more you can make something controversial or a little bit hateful or triggering, like, it does 10 times better.
100%.
And so people do have to be careful. Like when they get into a podcast or they get into your membership, those are the people I've realized that care the most. Like the people listening to this still are the ones who really care. They're trying to figure it out because they're willing to invest more than 2 minutes. Like
Totally.
They found most research says like people can't start a new habit if it takes longer than 2 minutes. So it's like they have to break it down too into like, don't think about getting new clean water. Just think about like ordering a filter.
Yeah.
That'll take you 2 minutes.
Yep.
And then later you have to install it and figure all that out later. But like the new habit has to be like a quick, easy thing. Like that's why they're like, call the doctor. Watch Charlie's podcast, join his membership, follow him on Instagram. Like that's quick. They'll do that.
Yeah.
But if you were like, go to the gym 5 times a week,
it's not going to
happen.
Yeah.
But if you were like, go call my trainer, they'll do that.
Right.
Gotta be fast and easy.
People want stuff efficient. It's the same thing as trying to mask a symptom. People want efficient things. And I mean,
it does take time. I mean, we talked about this at dinner before this, but it's like when people ask, how'd you get so healthy? It's like a little goes a long way, but just a little bit over time, and getting treated regularly is really helpful.
Yep.
I don't tell my patients this because it's like a secret, but I'm like, if you got treated weekly, you'd be like a superstar in like a year. But if I did that, none of them could get in.
True.
You know? True. But it's like for the patients who have listening to this, just schedule with Charlie like weekly for 2 years. You'll be like an entirely new person in 2 years.
If people, my patients who are listening to this are going to be like, they're going to be pissed at me because that's very hard to do.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard to get in to see you.
It's tough.
Yep.
It's tough.
But
I try my best.
Book it out ahead. Do you let people do weeklies?
It's like almost impossible.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible. I had to stop taking new patients technically. And for existing patients, you have to wait like 4 months to get back in. And that's too long for me generally.
Yeah, it's tough.
And I try to, touch base with them in between if something needs to be changed or whatever. And I've pretty much maxed out my schedule because I have to get home for dad duties.
That's important.
It's very important. It's everything. And so I try my best, but I also have to get home for dinner and have a specific sleep schedule. Thank you. For our 3-year-old. And so I physically don't have the time because of life. And so, but to your point, like I try to get treated 1 therapy a week. So mine are Thursday mornings. I either go get adjusted or I get acupuncture every Thursday. And then I rotate weeks.
So that's like your coach.
That's my coach.
Like
I have a great acupuncturist. I found a great chiropractor in Nashville. And then we have a craniosacral therapist come to the house. Yeah. And everyone pretty much gets that almost weekly.
I mean, with all you know about waking up and seeing Earth from miles away, like, why do you still need to get treated? Like, shouldn't you be perfectly fine by now?
It's impossible, man. I mean, we live the human experience, right? Like, we walk, we drive in cars. There's your posture. Yeah. Health is built. You can't coast. You can only coast downhill in health. So you have to take action steps to build. And I freaking love acupuncture.
Yeah, same.
I mean, I love it. I sit on that table and it is just like bliss.
Yep.
So I just feel good. So I want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have people in your corner.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best part about what we do is like people, as you said in your first story, like coming for us full circle, people walk in a certain way and they walk out healthier.
Yeah.
Like you walk out feeling better.
Yep.
That's why holistic medicine has a 95+% patient satisfaction rate, which is regular chiropractors just getting like a quick adjustment. Yep. People feel better, so they're happy.
Yep.
And there's not a lot of people who go to the regular doctor and they're like, I left and I'm better already. Like, this is great. You're literally functioning at a higher level instantaneously.
It chills. Yeah. It spoke volumes. That right there changed my whole life path, whole life trajectory. Yep. Because it was the only doc that I have ever seen that people walk in feeling crummy and leave feeling better and higher functioning. What is not to love?
Right.
I could do that forever.
I know. I thought I wanted to be an MD, and every surgeon I talked to, they were like either divorced or on psych meds, or they didn't have time for their kids, or they were like, school sucks. Like the profession's decent, but like school sucks. The hours are tough. You're not getting paid as much. Insurance is a lot. Like, and it just, over time, I was like, the profession seemed not fun. Like, what was the thing you said about dinner about fun, Victor?
Oh, Victor Frank. If it's not fun, it ain't worth doing it.
Yeah. Like, seeing an acupuncturist or a chiropractor should be fun.
Yeah, should be great.
Yeah.
Should be a great time.
Yeah. I think most of my patients, like, I am having fun all day. Yeah. Like, it's tiring treating people. It's tiring listening to their suffering. But it's the best profession.
It's like a good tired.
It's a good, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, like I have been in adrenal fatigue.
Yeah.
For sure. And it takes a long time to get out of it. But I got in adrenal fatigue for serving humanity, and I can live with that.
That's a great purpose.
Yeah.
To give you energy.
For sure. I mean, we get to witness miracles all the time. But if you take a step back and see what the impact we're really making on people's lives, nothing is more rewarding than that. There is no amount of money, no vacation, no life experience, maybe besides having a kid, because that's pretty special. But helping someone in need, nothing's better.
Yeah, it's addicting.
It is addicting.
Yeah,
it is addicting.
That's a good one.
Yeah, facts tell, stories sell.
Stories sell. How do you tell stories on social media? You think it's...
I haven't figured that one out.
Yeah. Sorry, but that's what you have your podcast for.
Yeah, podcast is fun. It's called Red Pill Your Healthcast. It's on Apple and Spotify. It's me and Lauren Johnson, who goes by Natural Nurse Mama, who was woken up in 2020.
Oh.
She was a full-on nurse, full-on Western medicine. She was on 7 medications and got exposed to Young Living.
Oh.
Got her off all her meds.
Wow.
And started waking up to COVID stuff, and then started doing Instagram and did really well with that. We connected on Instagram, and she's in Louisville. I used to call it Louisville, but now I have to say Louisville. If she's listening, she'll get irritated.
It's not Louis?
No, it's Louisville.
Louisville.
We were just talking last night because we shoot on Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I always thought it was Louisville. She's like, I know, it's Louisville. You know?
Sounds like there's an L, like Louisville.
No, it's so bizarre. She's like, it's a Kentucky thing. I'm like, I get it.
It's kind of like how BOWL, we say both.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing. But
so her and I go on Wednesday nights. It really started because she wanted to talk about vaccines. And I'm like, I'm down.
yeah,
You know, I'm totally down. As long as we can say whatever we want, I'm in.
I remember that.
Yeah. So we started last September we started out with 3 vaccine episodes. We started talking about COVID vaccine. We've done like asthma, hormones, methylation, parasites. We did ADD last night, ADD, ADHD. And we get on Wednesday nights and we just talk. And it's been going really well. That's where we can tell stories. Because when I'm on Instagram, I'm really just doing Q&As in the stories.
Yeah.
I think that's like
helping bring some simple or education to people.
trying.
Yeah.
And then like I was telling you, at dinner, you got to kind of balance it because the reason that I've done the first 11 topic videos in my membership is based off of one, what I see most in practice, but it also is the same questions that are asked over and over, which makes sense because I see that the most in practice, right? And so I try to give solutions, but a lot of it is in depth. It's not just like a simple answer. So then I plug the membership in videos like, hey, I just spent 45 minutes to an hour going in a certain order for you to be exposed in a certain way that makes it land and makes you understand. Because the whole goal of the membership is to make people understand what's going on. Mm. You know, I give them what I would do or what I would try. And just take complex topics and make it so that you can talk to your sibling about it and be able to be like, hey, you know, this is kind of how it works. And it's been going awesome. It's been like I was telling you again at dinner, it was just like, I think that's my calling. I found like my next purpose in this lifetime, because the amount of reach compared to 4 walls of treating patients is, again, addicting.
Yeah. And I mean, you get the occasional haters, like just before we started the podcast,
Oh,
you had the one person who's like, how do you manage that? Because I know, like, for us, it's pretty, you get used to it.
Yeah.
But like for a lot of people, they're not speaking out or they're not talking about natural health because they're afraid of other people's judgment. Like, how do you manage that?
There's a quote that every time that happens, there's 2 things that go through my head. One is, am I going to respond out of ego? And that's never a good idea, right? You try to have a 0 ego in everything. So I try to only engage when I know it's authentic to myself. And 2 is the quote that flowers don't care about flowers next to what flowers next to them are doing. They just bloom. Mm-hmm. And so there's always going to be haters. Yeah. You know, how many times when I started writing a blog before I did social media, before you showed me the magic kingdom of social media, I got an email like in the first few weeks to start one saying, you know, I had some asking about different products and, you know, thanks for this blog helped me. The vaccine blog went all over the world and like my website shut down because I had so many views overnight. But someone said, you know, hey, why are you talking about all this? You're not a real doctor. You know, you don't.
I love when people say that.
They always say that. And like in my head, I'm like, of course I'm not an RD, a real doctor, because an RD is the 3rd leading cause of death in the world, medical error. But then I'm like, that's coming from my ego. You know, I love people where they're at. And there's some really good RDs out there, some really good MDs.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and just to throw them all under the bus like that is just not, you don't gain ground by throwing dirt.
Right.
And so that's how I deal with it, man. There's always going to be haters. Just do what I do. And I'm looking for people who are looking for me.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
As we all are.
I know once in a while I'll try to, I have this new strategy where like there's I know there's always like a few trolls just waiting,
of course,
for a post where like they're gonna attack, like they're sitting there in there. I see this like they're stewing there like trolls in their basement. They're like, I hate this guy, and then eventually I say something that is just triggering enough to like a vegan to a conventional medicine person where they're like, you're not a real doctor, and then they like jump on you and they pounce, and I'm just like, I just block them because I used to spend a half hour, an hour trying to like talk to them. Worst decision ever.
It
never works. It never works. Yeah, it never works. So now sometimes I'll just like intentionally do a triggering post just to like pull them out, like weeding.
Perfect.
Get rid of the troll. Just weed them out.
You're like trolling the troll.
Yeah, trolling them. Like just like giving them like, here's your opportunity to expose yourselves.
I love that.
So I can block you.
The last time that something was ever like pretty like, I don't want to say intense, but I was doing a live with Nicole, and there was this vegan on there that kept saying how arrogant I am because they were quoting some research from some medical doctor who like were curing all these cardiology patients with a vegan diet in some hospital.
Right.
I'm like, look, dude, I get it. I get it that you're a keyboard warrior and you're typing with your anemic vegan fingers. I was just having fun on a late night in California, and it's funny. It's fun to do that, but it's childish at the same time. But I just couldn't. We just kept going back and forth, and it was just interrupting the whole video. Nicole's like laughing, and I'm just,
I mean, the vegans are notoriously easy to trigger.
Extremely.
I don't know why that is.
They're usually the people with the pronouns in their profiles too.
Right. I mean, it's just the people. I don't know. There's a level of activism that comes with some vegans, not all vegans. Like some are doing it because they feel better and it's health reasons, and there are some conditions like heart conditions where like it can help and yada yada. But a lot of the vegans, I think, don't do it well. They're like, I call them spaghetti-o vegans.
Spaghetti.
Like they're just eating out of cans.
Yeah.
They're like ordering stuff that's not super healthy.
Yeah, and over time, I mean, if you are vegan and you don't have essential fatty acids and essential proteins to build neurotransmitters, you're going to lose your mind.
Yeah, that's a harsh statement, but it really is true. I see that in practice all the time. It's like I tell them, like, same with birth control. I'm like, you're fine for like 2-3 years. By 2 to 5 years, like, it's not going to go well.
That's the issue. Is like you may have felt well right away and for the first year or 6 months or whatever, but down the road you will break down. Yeah. And it's all from just seeing it in practice. Everyone who comes in with intense anxiety or depression, my first question is, how long have you been vegan? I'd say 80% plus of them are vegans.
Yeah, it's really common. I think because initially going plant-based helps them feel better because they're eating like fruits and vegetables for the first time, or they're eating real food, and the meat can be hard to digest. Mm-hmm. So they don't have to, their digestion doesn't have to work as hard. They feel a little better.
They have a better antioxidant status.
Yeah, for sure. It helps their inflammatory status right away. Yeah. Because they probably were eating not good quality meat.
Correct.
So it's it helps, but there's very few people, I think, thrive on it.
What would you say when someone says, what's the best diet? What would you say?
Real food.
Okay.
Like no ingredients.
Okay, you take that approach.
Just, yeah. Or I like the intuitive eating thing.
Okay.
I know you were big on the blood type diet for a while, but
I think there's some truth to it.
Yeah. I think the best diet is experimenting, eating stuff that's like real food where you can eat each ingredient.
Yeah.
Eating what your ancestors ate generally. Trying to find cleaner, real food, and just like going intuitively. Yeah, that's my favorite. What's your favorite diet?
Number one is off all food sensitivities. Identifying that, and then like you said, because I have tried different diets on myself and see how I feel and stuff like that. And blood type diet, which gets the most hate, I would say.
Yeah.
I read the book. Have you read the book?
A long time ago.
So it's fascinating to me because the thing that catches my attention with it is the blood type gene is right next to the immune system and digestive tract gene. And because they're so close, they have gene linkage. So one affects the other. And if you eat certain foods that, quote unquote, agree with your blood type through lectin responses, then it's like lock and key mechanism. And then that helps the digestive tract, which helps the immune system. From that perspective, I get it. But to say that, type A blood types don't benefit from animal protein. I think it's a cumulative effect where it's like, type A blood types, which I am, which is the second most common blood type.
Me too.
I think you're type A, right?
Yep.
Our resting cortisol rate is supposedly higher, which turns our stomach acid down more than the average person. So we don't digest animal proteins as well as like a type O. But that's not to say that, in my opinion, we don't benefit off animal protein. I think it's cumulative possibly, but I say that besides food sensitivities, like getting off food sensitivities, I think a Mediterranean diet is the number one. I think it has animal protein, it has fish for essential fats, it's olive oil, it's sea salt, it's fruits and veggies.
Right. It's a lot of produce and healthy meats.
Yeah, like I think if I had to choose one for everybody, which I know there's not one diet for absolutely everybody, I would probably say that would be my go-to.
Yeah, that is probably a good one. Sometimes I'll have like anything that's anti-inflammatory, but people can do some weird things when they don't have like good guidance.
Yeah.
That's why it's helpful to have a coach.
100%.
I get a lot of people come in and they just like eat either like a smoothie for breakfast or oatmeal.
Yeah.
They eat a sandwich for lunch. They eat takeout for dinner. And they're like, I'm healthy.
Yeah, I go to Panera Bread. I have the half soup and half sandwich. It's healthy.
Right.
It's like, you ever see that South Park that they did like the food pyramid? And they just make fun of how it's just upside down.
Yep.
And that's so true.
It is true.
It's like a gluten episode.
What about gluten in the Mediterranean diet, though?
Yeah, because they do like, they do breads and stuff like that and pastas. I think it's if you do more of the meats and veggies, that's the proper way.
Yeah.
It's like, don't fear that stuff, but I just don't think the grains are anywhere close to what they used to be.
Yeah, they're definitely not.
And yes, you could, like we do homemade sourdough. We haven't done it in a while, but that thing like lives. It's like living in my fridge right now. Like the starter.
Really?
Oh, like Andrea like makes this organic sourdough from original starter, all this stuff. And it's like it's a living bean. So you have to like use it or else it dies. And I'm like, it's like, you ever seen the movie Flubber?
Yeah.
I'm like thinking this thing's going to start like jumping around and stuff, She's like talking to it and like, I'm like, all right, it tastes good. And then she was like practicing for Thanksgiving because we make a sourdough stuffing every Thanksgiving.
Ooh.
So that's what she was practicing because it took like 4 or 5 loaves to get it down, And we had this amazing hummus in the house, and I mowed down like 3 loaves of bread. And
how'd you feel?
I didn't feel good at all. And I go to the acupuncturist, right? And he's like, all right, hold out your pulses. I'm like, Andrea is making freaking sourdough, organic sourdough, homemade, and my body is not having. He's like, yeah, your small intestine and gallbladder are angry. I'm like, I resonate with that. Now needle me.
Yeah. Like clear it out.
Please help me.
It's like some doctors just learn great healing methods so that they can eat whatever they want.
Totally. Yeah.
It's not the worst way to go. I mean, can't be 100% clean.
You got to live
an eating
a little
disorder.
bit. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Yeah. Unless you have like a full-blown autoimmune issue that is like intense,
right?
Where gluten will like backtrack you 6 months.
Yep.
You can live a little bit.
Yeah.
But what Goodhart said, right? It's not what you do the 1 day a month. It's what you do the other 29 days.
Right. So binge that one day.
Okay. And Francis said, if you make a mistake, make a big mistake and be proud of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes those mistake days bring joy, and joy helps the HPA axis. Going back to that.
It does help. Yeah. Yeah. When your HPA axis was wrecked.
Oh, yeah.
Like when I wanted to go to that real quick, like what was the story there? And
Yeah.
I'm curious like how you got better.
Man. So the reason why it happened was because of a few factors. The biggest one was my schedule. What I would do is on Tuesdays, I would work from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. straight through. And I didn't eat breakfast. I'm an adrenal person, so to speak, and my blood sugar is very sensitive. So imagine that for 5 years. I skipped breakfast. I skipped lunch. I eat a late lunch. Okay. Then Wednesdays.
Why'd you do that? Why didn't you eat breakfast?
I was never hungry.
Oh.
One
Is
of
this as a
those.
doctor?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
I mean, I would do some protein shakes, which I'd be hungry in like an hour. So I would have a little bit of something. I wouldn't eat nothing, but like I wasn't having a protein rich, like what I needed. Then that would set me up for Wednesday, which I would work from 10 to 1, take lunch, and then work from 3 to 6, and then do the health class from 7 to 9:30. And I would have like no food. So I would skip dinner. Now I'm seeing 40 people a day. And imagine that, how much energy you're giving. 10-minute visits. Boom, boom, boom. No food. Or not proper eating patterns. 5 years of that. Basically my birthday of 2020, right around my birthday, I remember sitting down eating some chicken curry for lunch on a Tuesday, right? Late lunch, like a 3:30 p.m., 4 p.m. lunch. And I just got spinning, just dizzy. And it didn't leave for like 4 years.
What?
Yeah. Like it was bad. Maybe
Spinning?
not 4 years. Like just like a dizziness that turned into like fatigue. And when that happens, when I did a salivary cortisol thing, it wasn't flatlined and it was a little low. So it wasn't like awfully low, but it was definitely low range.
Yep.
But that's enough when you're doing, frequency medicine and you're giving a ton of energy each day. And I'm not filling my cup. I'm not getting treated as much as I should. I'm not practicing what I preach. I was so high on treating people and living the life. I mean, I was living a dream life. We were living on the beach in Laguna Beach, ocean view apartment. I'm 27 years old, 28 years old. I'm a car person. I'm driving my dream car. We lived across the street from the little cove where we're snorkeling all the time. We're living in Laguna Beach. We're living in paradise. We don't have kids yet. We're having great time and just got married.
So you weren't that stressed, but you were overworking.
It was overworking. And that was the culture in California, is just like basically work till you drop. As much as I hate to say that, it's what the culture is out there in that clinic. And so love all of them, but the way that my energy, the way I, how I am, I crashed over time. And so I had to change my schedule. I had to find 2 days off in a row. I never had 2 days off in a row.
Oh.
That's a big thing too.
Like a real weekend kind of thing.
Correct. I always work Saturdays. All 7 years I was in California, I worked Saturdays because traffic's so bad out there that people book a year in advance on Saturdays because there's no traffic or less traffic.
Wow.
And people would drive from 2 hours away, which in traffic would be 5 hours.
Jeez.
So giving up Saturdays I felt was selfish, even though a drowning person can't just save a drowning person, right? So I had to save myself. And just did a bunch of, I feel like you learn the most on yourself when you go through something. You really take time to dive even deeper, and just learned of, blood sugar, cortisol, adrenaline, sleep schedule, eating schedule, taking glandulars, taking adaptogens. Minerals are huge, potassium. We're so deficient in potassium. And then working on still my gut, right? I was eating sushi all the time, lived next to the best sushi restaurant in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. 242 Fusion in Laguna. I lived down the street from it. I think I almost overdosed on Gastro Digest every time I ate there. I take so much digestive enzymes, but like I ate so much sushi that it just like was constant. So parasites. We lived in mold in Laguna.
Ooh.
That's why we moved from Laguna, because when my wife was pregnant. And we moved there and I started getting dizzy when we moved in. And I'm like, yeah, there's mold in this place. And I'm like, but there's mold everywhere in California. So what can I do to stay here? And I worked on myself and got out of that. But then when wife's pregnant, I'm like, okay, now you guys going to do something about it? Or, they're like, oh, they sent a run-of-the-mill company out there. They're like, no, there's no mold in here. The spore count's the same indoors, outdoors. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go get my type of company. 4 species of mold that was found.
Ugh.
And the people who owned the complex wouldn't do anything about it, so we left. So there's that going on, right? So I had to detox mold, because even if my work schedule is good, if there's mold in me, that's a constant cortisol trigger.
Yeah.
Because cortisol initially is good because that helps fight infection, inflammation. It's just a short-term system that when you turn into long-term breaks you down every barrier system of your body. And so I had to do that. And then when I moved to Tennessee, I started working 3 days a week, took weekends off. It took a lifestyle change. It really did.
That's kind of like I broke down in chiro school.
Did you?
Abby was treating me through it, but it was like, it took me 3 months of just sleeping.
Yeah.
I slept it off. I actually would go salvy from 7 a.m. to noon, come home, sleep from 1 to dinner time for like 4 or 5 hours up on the rooftop in the sun.
Yeah.
Just sleep in the sun for like 4 or 5 hours, wake up, have dinner at like 6:30, 7, and then I go to sleep. And I just slept it off.
For 3 months.
For 3 months, I pretty much just slept about like 12 to 15 hours a day for 3 months.
That'll help.
It helped. She was just like, "You're just burnt." I was like, "You're at like a 0%." I was like, "Great."
I mean, it's school, right? It's learning. It's constant.
So I think that is, but rest is, as you're saying, is super underestimated.
Yeah.
When people are go, go, go and they're burnt, and it's like, that's sometimes what people really need
100%.
is like, they're in a tough
REM
situation.
sleep. You need to, you heal in your sleep.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm big into boxing and UFC, and one of my favorite UFC fighters of all time, Habib. Are you familiar with him or no?
Yeah.
So what he said is the most underrated therapy that, you know, you're going to do physical therapy, you're eating clean, all this. He said, whenever I train, in between training, I sleep. He goes, that's how you repair the best. And he's a high intense athlete, you know?
Yeah. One of my red flags I have for patients is when they come in and say that they can't nap. I'm like, they're usually too stressed out to even just rest.
Their mind can't shut down.
Right. When they can't meditate, when they can't nap, when the people who are sick, like, meditation is so hard. I hate it.
Yeah.
Like, uh-oh.
Yeah. Red flag.
Yep. You're going to be a patient for a while.
What do you think about naps and the timing of naps, and is it good for your circadian rhythms?
I don't think it matters that much. I mean, some people, I think, I've been napping a while now.
Yeah.
I've been napping every day for like 7 years. And the reason why is I took over Dr. Pieter van Huel, right? The Belgian doctor, we had him on our podcast. And he took like the European siesta. So he would work from 8 to noon and then 2 to 6, 4 or 5 days a week. And so he would go home. His wife would have like a great meal with like mussels and produce and Belgian endive and stuff ready for him.
Basically Mediterranean diet.
Mediterranean, and he would take a nap for like an hour and then he'd go back to work.
It's perfect.
And I think you can nap at any time. It's probably not good to nap like right before bed. I think like a midday little siesta is probably ideal. But I think once people get good at napping, like even like Huberman Labs has all like the non-sleep deep rest. You can just like close your eyes, listen to some calm music.
Yeah.
That's a meditation. Just like you could listen to a meditation, you could do yoga nidra, you could do anything. Yeah. But just taking a little rest or a walk without your phone, like walking, meditation, anything to just like break or rest for a little bit. And then getting good at naps, I think is good. But I'm not like super picky about naps, but not many people take naps.
No.
But I love it.
Yeah, I mean, ever since having kids, I've realized how much I love naps.
Yeah. Well, if you can't sleep all the way through the night, it helps.
Yeah. Like my 3-year-old doesn't want to go down for a nap oftentimes. And I'm like shaking her like, you don't understand. I will change with you right now.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny. It's like the saying is you spend your whole like youth wanting to be old and your whole old wanting to be young.
Yeah. Right.
And that's one of the big things. I want to nap again like I was a kid.
Is there a length of time you like to nap for?
So I've heard 20, 30 minutes is the gold like time frame, right? Then you like really recharge. If anything beyond that, you could be groggy. I don't know. Yeah. I can sit there and nap for 2-3 hours.
Same. Yeah.
I love sleep.
Yeah, same. I could do a 2-hour nap, wake up and feel like ready to go.
100%.
I used to feel groggy, but I think those are new nappers.
Yeah, those are the new. Yeah,
right. If you're a regular napper, you can handle it.
That's right.
It's like working out. Like
this is an amateur napper hour.
Right. These are like powerlifting nappers.
That's right. I can nap with the best of them.
Right.
Yeah. If it was a sport, I'd be pretty damn good.
Yeah. Well, I think when I was in chiro school, I didn't really nap that great, and I was jealous of people who could fly and sleep on the plane. And I was like, I'm going to develop that skill. And it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I slept on a plane right here this morning.
It's a secret weapon.
I love going on planes because I love sleeping and putting music on and just sleeping.
That's a great idea.
It's great.
Do you have any, were you always able to nap? Mm-hmm. It's like easy for you.
My biggest health crash was when I was 19 years old in undergrad. What I would do is I would study from 8 p.m. to 2 in the morning. And then the following my freshman year, I had the worst health crash of my life.
Ooh.
And to the point where I couldn't be around music without feeling nauseous. That's how fried I was.
Yikes.
I mean, bad. Everything I ate for that whole summer, I felt nauseous. I was put on proton pump inhibitors from my medical doctor. I didn't know any of this stuff existed.
Jeez.
I would stay up all night till 7:30 in the morning playing video games, and then sleep from 7:30 to 3:30 in the afternoon for a whole summer. And then finally, you know what did it for me? You know what changed it? Marijuana.
Really?
Yep. I smoked a little bit in later high school. I was like, yeah, it's okay. You know, and then I had some good experience freshman year of college. I'm like, this feels great. It's awesome. Then I had a really bad experience, and I had some stuff that was laced with something, and I was hallucinating. It was just bad. So I stopped, and I was studying pre-med. I'm grinding studying. My friends are sitting around hitting bongs playing Call of Duty. You know, I'm like, I don't want to do that. This doesn't seem, whatever. Fast forward, I'm put on proton pump inhibitors. I can't have a sip of alcohol feeling nauseous, can't be around loud music, get nauseous just being around people, just bad. I mean, my sympathetic nervous system was fried. And I'm like, you know what? Forget this. I'm staying in. Give me that bong. I'm telling you, one hit, 10 minutes later, could do anything I wanted. Changed my sleep, changed my circadian rhythms, got me socializing, could eat, could drink anything, got me off proton pump inhibitors.
Wow.
That's a miracle in my eyes.
Yeah.
That's plant medicine miracle right there. And so I also think that maybe smoking marijuana all the time dropped my blood sugar so low and then stressed my adrenals too.
Yeah.
Because that's my thing with marijuana is, one, it has a ton of yeast and fungus if it's not organic.
Yeah.
And two is it's so good at lowering blood sugar, which is great for diabetics. But if you don't need that, then lowering blood sugar increases adrenaline, increases cortisol over time. There's that fatigue.
Is that why people get the munchies, you think?
Yeah, that's exactly why. That's what.
Interesting.
The best meals I ever ate was when I was stoned. I mean, it makes
sushi, stone sushi.
Oh, dude, the amount. I mean, we'd go to this 242 place and spend $400 on two of us.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I was living in California. Weed, sushi. Yeah. I stopped again, when I got into practice, and we went to California. I just, didn't really smoke much. And then some friends came to visit. They went to a dispensary, and one hit, and I'm like, I forgot about how great this is.
Do you recommend marijuana for people? CBD, THC, often or not really?
Not usually.
Yeah.
It has to be the right place, the right time on the right person. And again, it's so good at lowering blood sugar that most of my patients have hypoglycemia issues. So it really just wouldn't do well.
Yeah.
But I'm not against it. I mean, it changed my life too.
Yeah.
That's something that I will never forget. It went from literally on a proton pump inhibitor that we all know what happens where that goes.
Yep.
I had C. difficile colitis from that. I was rushed to the hospital. 4 a.m. when I was a senior in college. Andrea is sleeping over, and I woke up. It was 3 a.m, maybe 3 or 4 a.m. I woke up, and going to sleep, I felt something a little off in my gut, but it was whatever. I'm like, maybe I ate something. Wake up with the worst pain of my life. I was clenching my eyes so hard they were watering.
Wow.
Bad. I'm like, and I went back to the room like, Andrew, you need to drive me to the ER right now. And it's 3:34 in the morning. We go there. They put me on morphine, do a stool sample, just terrible bowels the whole week. And comes back C. difficile. And they put me on a month of antibiotics. And they're like, how could this happen? You weren't in the hospital, blah, blah, blah. look at the side effect of proton pump inhibitors, C. difficile.
Yep.
You know, and so I would say that, you know, marijuana got me off that, and that's pretty big.
That is big. I mean, proton pump inhibitors have a long list of side effects. They're not meant to be used for more than 12 weeks or so.
Correct.
Right?
I was on for 4 years.
And you can get
3 years.
Osteoporosis, chronic gut infections,
Yep,
deadly ones. You almost had a deadly gut infection that killed you.
for sure.
So, yeah, marijuana saved you from C. diff.
Yeah, that's
getting it again.
That's my marijuana story.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's, if you do it right, you know, if you can find organic and all the right stuff, I look at it as drinking alcohol. You know, people won't bat twice at a glass of wine, but they'll judge you if you smoke marijuana.
Yeah.
And I would take marijuana 1,000 times over 1,000 times over alcohol any day.
Yeah. I think it's a lot less toxic.
Yeah. Yeah. I would take marijuana and psilocybin over alcohol any day.
Yeah.
I enjoy a nice glass of wine. Don't get me wrong, but I barely ever drink.
Yeah. Do you think for people with fatigue hormone issues that marijuana is helpful?
No.
Or no.
No. Unless it's like, if it's severe mental stress, maybe, but not even.
Right. Like if that's going to get you to sleep and it's the only thing that'll do it.
Yeah. That's pretty much the sleep is probably the biggest one that I'll be like, hey, you might want to try this, like a really strong indica THC.
Yeah.
And just see if that cracks the code.
I guess that's the last question I want to ask you too, is like, if people are addicted to marijuana for sleep,
Yeah.
how do you transition them when they come in there like, I want to get off of it? Do you have products you like or techniques or things for people that help them?
Well, you have to evaluate the adrenal glands.
Yeah.
You have to. Like, it's number one, HPA axis adrenal glands. Make sure the adrenals are working properly. I'll start messing with melatonin a little bit, you know, something like that. But the best herb that I know of for chronic marijuana use is basil.
Holy basil?
No, regular basil.
Regular basil?
Regular basil.
Wow.
It's the product I use for that is Glypho-X Supreme. You know, they use it for glyphosate too, but the basil in it is what I have seen negate marijuana on a muscle test consistently. If they're like chronic users.
Just eat a lot of pesto.
Tons of pesto. Just bathe in pesto. Do a foot bath in pesto.
Glypho-X. I love pesto.
So good.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. But you got to regulate the adrenals.
Yeah.
You know, because it's so good at lowering your blood sugar, your adrenals just get trashed.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, there's a time and place. You know, sleep issues is definitely one. If that's, you know, I'd rather do that than go on. What's the main sleep med? Ambien.
Ambien.
Yeah, Ambien.
Yeah.
I'd rather you do
Zolpidem.
marijuana than Ambien.
Yep. Lunesta, all this stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, it's hard getting off some of those sleep meds.
It's very tough.
For sure.
It's very, very tough.
There was a good weaning one, but of course the FDA took it off the market. If you remember that, but that was a bummer.
Figures.
Kind of like DMSA, they used to have that available supplement. Now you can't, so it's a lot harder to get metals out. A lot of the great stuff gets taken away.
That it does. I know they were talking about NAC for a while and COVID taking that off, but I didn't see that happen.
No, thank goodness. Keep some of the tools. So if we're going to wrap up, I usually like to ask people, if you were going to die, like tomorrow or sometime soon, if you got some deadly illness, God forbid, what would be the things you would leave? Like if you could leave 1 to 3 messages for your kids, like what would be the things you would leave with humanity or leave for your followers or your members? Like what are the big key takeaways or life lessons you would kind of want to tell your ancestors?
I think that the purpose of life is to add value to the world and help people in that process. I think that's number one. Number 2, all the stress isn't worth it. It's just not. You know, like what I'll tell people is go look up when people are on their deathbed and what they say. You know, the last words, the last moments. Almost all of them say it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth the stress. Number 3, just never change. Always be yourself. Don't change for people to like you. Be yourself, and the right people will always love you. And you will attract the right people that will make this lifetime very rewarding.
Goosebumps.
Yeah, I think that's
a good
that's
one.
probably what I would say.
People are going to be happy with that.
I hope.
Yeah.
I hope.
Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, man, this was fun.
That was good.
Yeah, this was a good.
Just easy.
This is fun, man. This is got my own Rogan experience with you.
Yeah. Welcome to the Joe Campbell experience.
That's right. Yeah, this is great, dude. You're doing it such a good thing. And
Thanks.
like I said, you're the one who showed me the magic of being able to have reach to people outside of the four walls of our offices. And that's life-changing.
Well, that's what I realized. I was like, I can reach more people in a day than I could in a year seeing patients. And then now it's more like for both of us, it's more people in a day than our entire careers would have been.
For sure.
And you can touch people differently when it's one-on-one care.
Yeah.
It's deeper.
Yep.
But you are giving that spark to millions of people.
Totally.
So,
and you can be that person that gets them into someone like us in their area, which now they get that deeper touch and that changes their downlines. And
you're the red pill or the gateway drug.
That's right.
For humanity.
That's right, man. Matrix 1, my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, so good.
Favorite movie of all time.